and welcome to Cabaret Beat Season 2. I am your host, Wydetta Carter, and I am thrilled to bring you more members of the Chicago Cabaret Professionals and let you find out a little bit more about why they do what they do. This is such an exciting year for the cabaret community as we celebrate 100 years of cabaret in Chicago. Today's guests are Claudia Hommel and Heather Moran. So we invite you to relax, sit back, join in the chat. Here we go with Cabaret Beat. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2.
Que reste-t-il de nos amours? Que reste-t-il de ces beaux jours? Une photo, vieille photo de ma jeunesse. Que reste-t-il des billets doux, des mois d'avril, des rendez-vous? Un souvenir qui me poursuit sans cesse. Bonne vallée, cheveux au vent, baisers volés, rêves mouvants. Que reste-t-il de tout cela? Dites-le-moi. Un petit village, un vieux clocher, un paysage si bien caché, et dans un nuage, le cher visage de mon passé. Bonheur fané, cheveux au vent, baisers volés, rêves mouvants. Que reste-t-il de tout cela? Dites-le-moi. Un petit village, un vieux clocher, un paysage si bien caché. Dans un nuage, le cher visage de mon passé. Le souvenir et le nuage de mon passé.
Welcome, Claudia Hommel.
Thank you, Wydetta. Thank you.
Oh, just whenever I started the Cabaret Beat, it was like, who should I be interviewing? Who needs to tell their story? And you most definitely are someone who needs to tell their story. You are one of the reasons why, Cabaret Beat is here and so many other things. So before we get to you being the reason why all of this is happening, let's go back and find out how you even got started. So you can take me back to 8 years old, you can take me back to high school, you can take me back to college, but take us back to Claudia discovering music and how and when you thought it was going to be a part of your life, and include your theater background too, because that's very important. So take it away.
Well, I was born in Paris while my father, an American from Detroit, was studying composition with Max Deutsch and also Nadia Boulanger. And so I grew up in a musical environment. And I'm told that I was singing while I was still in the crib. So later, when we moved back to Detroit, because my parents are the Americans in Paris, I started singing in middle school glee club and high school choir and high school madrigals. And I was never quite mature enough vocally to match up to these other fabulous singers at my high school. So I just sort of assumed I was going to be in the background. I was going to sing along with every other second soprano, the Bach E minor Mass, and do my bit. I had a voice teacher who insisted that I was more than a chorister. And she was an opera singer. She had, Marilyn Cotlow had been the first Lucy in Menotti's The Telephone. And I started to sing solos. And that sort of unleashed a whole storytelling expression that I needed to do. And by the time I got to college, still not thinking I'm going to be a performer, I'm going to get a history degree, I'll get my library science master's, I'll do all of these normal, regular kinds of things. I kept on singing. And I would put together recitals. They were recitals, classical music recitals. But they were recitals that always had a theme. I was always linking songs to each other and making up essentially a cabaret show with classical art songs. So by the time I finished my master's degree and was working as an archivist for the Detroit Institute of Arts, I was thrown into a group of performers called the Grand Circus Exchange, because my next voice teacher was saying, "You're not just a singer, you're a performer. You need to go to these workshops." There'd be an opera workshop, and there'd be an acting workshop, and a Shakespeare workshop, and a Commedia dell'arte workshop. And I found myself in the midst of an organization called, aptly enough, the Grand Circus Exchange, which was a fabulous group of performers who knew no borders between disciplines. We could do ballet, art songs, pop songs. Our Romeo and Juliet review went from everything from, opera arias to Romeo and Juliet. So all of that was what I thought being a performer was all about, was that you could do any of it and do it with all kinds of different music and performance styles. And then I went to New York. I gave up the job at the Detroit Institute of Arts to find myself on stage. And New York can be kind of brutal. It's really a tough place to live and survive. And I'm auditioning for musical theater and musical theater and musical theater. And the casting directors are saying, "Really interesting." But I go to a ragtime audition for the musical Ragtime, and I'm singing an actual ragtime song. And everybody's looking at me like, "What? No. But interesting. And in the course of this, I got together with a pianist by the name of Steve Blyer, who was the chief accompanist at this point for the legendary Martha Schlama. I knew of Martha when I was a little girl because she would come touring the United States with Yiddish folk songs. And in Detroit, she would come and sing Yiddish folk songs and other material, international, anything, in German, French, everything. So Steve sends me to Martha because adrenaline would fuel my concerts and I'd be very engaged with my audience, but I didn't know how to repeat a song, to do it a second time and not lose that spark. The third performance would fall flat. And it was because I hadn't figured out the specificity of the work, really digging in. I was really going on, fueling on just my passion to connect to my audience and loving these songs. Well, that's great, but that's not enough. And Martha, at the time, was studying with Uta Hagen at HB Studios. So she's bringing in all of the emotional before, the moment before work, all of the Meisner and HB work. And she's applying it to songs. And I'm going, wow, I can finally put together the acting on one side and the singing on the other and bring them together. And I don't need to do musical theater. I just need to be able to do these songs and tell these stories. And that's how I became a cabaret singer.
When did you start then thinking, okay, now that I'm not going to do musical theater, what am I going to do? I'm not going to stop singing. I want to perform.
Yeah.
So you came up with almost said the French Connection, but
it is. Yeah.
It is basically the French
Yeah.
Connection. So tell us how you started that here for yourself.
Okay.
You're trying to make your own niche for yourself.
Yeah, because obviously one of the things that happens in cabaret is figuring out which story you want to tell. And one thing that happened in New York that really, well, it's an expression also of just what the hustle is in New York. Everybody's doing autobiographical cabaret shows. And there's the life of a musical theater person who's just fighting to get a gig is not terribly interesting. Sorry to say. So that's where I'm singing songs with a Spanish flavor, Canciones a la Vida, or a working person's cabaret, looking at how people do their jobs and take their vacations. So when I'm in Chicago, the one thing that I had avoided was being an American from Paris. Somehow I felt like if I sing in French, they'll know I'm not real because I have an American accent. I have an American attitude toward a lot of things. I'm not French. But a Haitian friend of mine, hearing me speak in French and very excited to meet another Francophone, says, I will put you on the cover of my magazine, my French language magazine, and we'll do a story about you. I'm going, oh, shit. Or I could say, merde, because I didn't have a show. He's going to put me on the cover of a magazine and I don't have any show coming up. So immediately the problem is I now have to put together a show. And so I put together Souvenirs of Paris 1950. And I had to find pianists, and I found Bob Moran, and I found Mark Burnell. And the Royal George Theatre had a little theater upstairs that was called the Cabaret Theatre. And I booked the place for a run and had 36 songs to start with. And Jonathan Barbanel, lovely critic, theater critic, suggested very kindly that it was a bit much and that I should cut it down. And we had tested some of this material at Chez Paul, made the mistake of inviting our dear critic, Howard Reich, to come and review it. No, was not ready for prime time. He didn't write the review, thank you. He also then ignored writing anything about me for the next 20 years. But lesson learned. But the French Connection really does connect for me. It's a huge part of why I am the way I am. It explained why my parents, who right after World War II go off to Paris and spend 7-8 years of their lives there, how they were in the midst of a political environment that allowed them to speak to their truth about working class politics and civil rights. My mother translated for Paul Robeson at a peace conference. They were really able to do that, while back in the US of A, the McCarthy period was keeping everyone silent. The blacklist was affecting everyone from Hollywood to factory workers. And when they returned to Detroit, they were fearless. They hadn't lived through that. So they had gotten, I don't know, Europeanized. They'd gotten cosmopolitan. They'd gotten to be seeing the world through a bigger frame. And that very deeply affected me.
So then you now decided that you're going to create your world in the French world, but then you took it another step, because you said earlier there wasn't a lot of cabaret in Chicago.
Right.
So,
No.
before you go on, I want to read something, a quote that you gave us. It says, "I call people," I guess Ralph Fiennes said this, "I call people successful who have a fully developed sense of being alive and engaged in a lifetime task of collaboration with other human beings." So that
Yes.
is a perfect quote to lead you into becoming one of the founding members of the Chicago Cabaret Professionals.
Yeah.
You're now creating space for a lot
Uh,
of people to
Yeah.
do what you did. So how did that come about?
It started when I went to an Arts Midwest conference and ended up sharing a booth with June Shaleen, wonderful singer-songwriter. And we're bemoaning what's happened to the scene. There's a lot of, for singer-songwriters, there had been Lincoln Avenue, a spate of clubs and places where you could take your guitar and you could sing and have an audience. And there had been Rush Street, and there had been Punchinello's and Mr. Kelly's, and even more closer to this time, there had been Gold Star Sardine Bar, which had brought Spider Saloff into town, for example. There had been Toulouse on the Park, and these clubs were closing, and there wasn't even talk of Davenport's. That hadn't happened yet. So I said to Bob and Mark Burnell and his, at that point, fiancée, Anne, and to Susie Petrie and some other folks that I knew. Becky Menzie, I knew. I was totally intimidated by her, but I knew her. And I said, could we get together and just talk about what we might be able to do to create a scene here in Chicago? And in this living room, we met for the first time in November 1997. And Pat Rusk was there, and John Escala and Bradford Newquist. And we sat down and talked about what we thought cabaret was and what could we do to create a scene. And it didn't take very long, but we met about every 3 weeks or a month. We took minutes and we shared them around, and started to just recruit more and more people. And within the year, we had set up the structure for the Chicago Cabaret Professionals as a membership organization that would advocate the art of cabaret. And we realized we also had to produce something. It wasn't just a matter of finding or encouraging new venues. We were going to have to find ways to showcase our work. So we started with a gala in 1998, October. And that's where things really started to go rolling. It's been quite a ride. When I think that, we've been around now for 23 years.
Wow.
And, for artists to be able to continue working together, and some of us are still founding members, right? There were, I think, 35 people listed on the very first brochure as founding members. So we've lost some, but
right.
the people join in, and I think we've become more sophisticated. I think also about We originally talked about it being elegant. You don't have to be elegant to do cabaret. You just have to tell the truth.
Right.
So,
And there is some elegance in cabaret because cabaret it's you can do so much under that word. Your show can be as elegant as you want, or I don't care if you're a country girl or guy and you want to sit there in your dungarees and sing. It's you're
it's all of
creating
that.
your show, so it covers everything.
Right.
Um,
I mean,
and
one
and
of the,
so I'm sorry. So what I was saying in the beginning is, uh, this program here falls under that umbrella. So when I
out of,
say, what you did, 23 years ago is one of the reasons why I'm sitting here speaking with you today. So thank you and all the other founding members, um, because it's interesting that you would think a city like Chicago would have been right up there like New York, and it just had all these opportunities because it's a musical town, and it didn't. And that's mind-boggling to me that maybe back in the 40s and 50s where they had the supper clubs, and if you look at cabaret per se, maybe it fell under that. But when that all went away, who was left? And then you said all of a sudden things were disappearing and closing. So
right.
yeah.
But you go back to the teens and the 20s, Chicago was the heart of cabaret in this country.
Right.
It went to New York after. It followed very much the same path as jazz in the old days. And when we were researching the 100 years of Chicago cabaret, there were 450 cabaret rooms in this town in the 20s until a new licensing requirement was created by the city aldermen who, are looking for this.
Right.
And then it got reduced to about 150. But can you imagine that number of intimate venues where anything goes? And a lot of it was driven by the South Side, by Bronzeville, the stroll on State Street in Bronzeville. That great street, I just want to say, right? That stroll was really the heart of cabaret before it ever got to Harlem or Midtown New York. And it's one of the things I think in terms of collaboration, one of the things that we're figuring out is, we have to retake that sense of anything goes. New York still has its formula. I think Chicago is a place where the burlesque side of it, the jazz, the country western that you're talking about, all of that, magic, puppeteers, all kinds of stuff, as long as it's in that intimate environment, telling the stories and probably singing a bunch of songs. That's really, I'm so proud of the fact that we have Black voices in cabaret now as a roster of artists, because guys, that was, you think of all of the major cabaret voices, so many of them were Black singers, right?
Mhm.
And
And for a while there, it disappeared. It
and
just
it's
disappeared.
disappeared,
Yeah.
disappeared.
Yeah.
So being able to celebrate it and expand it, and say it suits every generation. I,
Hmm.
my song shop, the workshop that I do at DePaul and on Saturdays elsewhere, it has been one of those places where I have classical singers and folk singers and singer-songwriters and R&B and jazz and standards. And all of it works to be treated, going back to Martha Schlama, going back to the lessons of how do you make your song specific? How do you connect it to yourself in order to connect it to your audience? And I think that's what we get to play with.
Well, Claudia, time flies so fast, and I am so appreciative of all that you have done for the cabaret world. And I'm so happy that we could discuss this and let people know who are watching, and people who are more and more coming out to see cabaret and more appreciative of a place where that intimacy and just you can basically become one on one with the person on stage because you don't have 600 seats around you. Maybe you have less than 100, and you feel like you're in the moment. And it takes professionals and musicians like you to, like you said, come together in someone's living room and let's create. And 23 years later, it's still going strong.
So
So you did something right. Okay. And
good.
it can only get better.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm just going to say during the pandemic, a lot of creativity came out of the members of CCP, using Zoom and other
Good.
social media. So, the branches that are coming out of CCP is exciting and thrilling. And I'm so happy that people are getting a chance to hear a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today. And you're not going anywhere. You
No.
have a lot coming up. So,
I do
uh,
want to say, can I say one thing? I hadn't mentioned that I'm currently the executive director of Working in Concert. And that's it's a collaborative, and it brings together what I'm doing with Chicago Cabaret Professionals to create the first Chicago Cabaret Week, which will happen in May 2020, the Chicago Paris Cabaret Connexion that does the international exchanges with our French cohorts and
let me
others.
correct you. May 2022. That's
The
okay.
2 years have just
We're
disappeared.
still trying to bring everything forward. I get it. It's okay.
Yeah, 2 years have just disappeared. And also Bellissima Opera, because again, the intimacy, the opera world is trying to figure out how do we get in on this intimacy business.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's that. And of course, Song Shop Live, Black Voices in Cabaret is one of our initiatives as well, because African-American performers in our collaboration
Mhm.
said, we need to do more to spotlight this. So all of that's available to folks who visit us at workinginconcert.org. And I really hope that people will, step forward and propose some other projects.
Well, we're going to leave it right there. And before you go, you have to perform for us. So please tell us what you're going to do.
Mon manège à moi. This is probably one of the few happy songs that Edith Piaf was ever associated with. Yes, it does have something to do with death and dying. When we're dead, we'll still be together. But anyway, it's my merry-go-round is you. And you turn my head faster than the earth can spin. And when I'm in your arms, nothing else on earth matters. Tu me fais tourner la tête. Mon ménage à moi, c'est toi. Je suis toujours à la fête. Quand tu me prends dans tes bras, je ferai le tour du monde. Ça ne tournerait pas pour ça. Ne t'es pas assez ronde. Comme tout diront en toi. Parce qu'on est bien tous les deux. Quand on est ensemble deux. Quelle vie on a tous les deux. On ensemble comme nous deux. On pourrait changer de planète. Changer mon cœur près du tien. Changerai le temps pour la fête. Et la dernière pour ah oui, parlons en la terre. Pour qui se prend la terre. Ma parole, y'a qu'elle sur terre. Y'a qu'elle pour qui t'en mystère. Mais pour nous, pas de problème. Car c'est pour la vie qu'on s'aime. Et s'il y avait pas de vie même, nous s'aimerait comme tu m'étais tourné la tête. Comme un Je suis toujours à la tête quand tu me vois tout tes bras. Je ferai le tour du monde. Je ne voulais pas tout ça. Ce n'est pas assez grande. Ce n'est jamais assez grande.
Yay! Thank you, Claudia. That was wonderful. Thank you, Patricia.
Let's take.
Hey, I hope everybody's enjoying Chicago Beat as much as I am. Here we are on a nice, typical cold Chicago night, and I am going to make the spring break. I've already pre-measured everything, so I've got a tumbler here full of ice, -1 ice cube, 1.5 ounces of pineapple, 1.5 ounces of orange, 3 ounces of Chicago Cabaret vodka. We're gonna top this off with some Topo Chicos sparkling mineral water, and I'd like to thank Kathy Glickman's husband Marty for turning me on to this water. Very carbonated, makes a great cocktail. So we're gonna fill that up, give it a nice little stir. We're gonna use a little grenadine syrup just to give it that little sweetness, just a splash. And we're gonna put in an orange slice. Now, doesn't that look tropical? Matter of fact, I'm feeling spring break time coming on! That's delicious. And if you want it a little bit sweeter, add a little bit more grenadine. Now back to the second half of Chicago Beat. Enjoy the show.
Since he went away, the blues walked up and met me. If he stays away, old rocking chair will carry. All I do is pray the Lord above will let me walk in the sun once more. Can't go on. Everything I had is gone. Stormy weather since my man and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time. Keeps raining all the time. I walk around feeling stormy and sad. Oh, I am so low and I'm feeling so bad. Rain's falling down with no holding and sand. These bitter and pattering feathers and oil drives me mad. This misery is just too much for me. Can't go on. Everything I had is gone. Stormy weather. Things I had and I ain't together. It's raining all the time.
hello. Welcome, Heather Moran.
Hello, hi.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to
Thank
see you. You're gorgeous. Thank you for having me doing this.
Well, thank you. Say that again. No, kidding. Oh, I'm happy to see you, and I'm loving your background there.
Just my little
Yeah.
hippie, yes.
That's okay. That's okay.
Or
Peace,
my-
baby. Peace. So, so, yes, let's get started because there's so much about you I'd like to everyone else to find out about. And I'm going to start out with your quote because I love it. It says, "If I'm going to sing like someone else, then I don't need to sing at all." Billie Holiday. Isn't
Yummy.
isn't that the truth?
It's yummy.
You have
It's
to
so
be
true.
yourself. Yeah, you have to be yourself. Be yourself. You may love the person who originated something, but be yourself. So that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So a little bit about you. You you started out in opera at Carnegie Mellon. Can't wait to hear about that. I love it.
did, yeah.
Then you went to the University of Colorado.
Follow the
Then
guy.
well, that happens. Then you graduated from Columbia College, and then you went to Second City School. So, young lady,
That's a story right there.
that is. So I want you can go back as far as you want, but let's hear your story. What age did music find you, or you found music? And let's get started.
It's so funny because I never talk about this stuff. I don't think my kids, I have 3 kids, they're 21, 20, and 15, but I don't even think they know that I even acted in the city for years and did Second City stuff. And, it's like something I don't talk about a lot. So it's kind of fun to talk about it. But I just started singing when I was super little. I mean, I just kind of had the bug. I was always showing off, and my parents were always like, putting me on like the fireplace ledge, and I would sing like all the songs from Annie. I think when my mom wouldn't take me down to the auditions in Chicago for Annie, like I swear to God, my 7-year-old self like literally wanted to die, but I just kind of always was singing. I had the bug. And I think in middle school, I grew up on the North Shore, and in middle school I was in the choir, and my the choir teacher called my mom and was like, she's kind of has something. I was in middle school, and I think it was 7th grade. And she's like, do you think that maybe you would be interested in having her start to take some voice lessons with a voice teacher at New Trier, And she's like, sure, and so I did it. And I was always a little bit of a rebel. So I started voice lessons earlier on there. And then when I got there, I started studying with Louise Burns, who was a beautiful woman all around. And she kind of put me on the classical training path. I was singing art songs, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dorky. I don't know at that time what I wanted to do. The Cure, I'm not even sure what I wanted to sing, but I just kind of fought the system of having to sing kind of the traditional stuff. And I'm so blessed that she got me down that path. And so I did things like I was in The Drunkard, the Barry Manilow musical at New Trier, and I was Mabel in Pirates of Penzance, and that kind of like, soprano, cute little button.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon. I literally was I'm not a dancer, so they were didn't know what to do with me. They were like, well, let's put you in this pocket, because I really couldn't do the musical theater path, I'm just like anti-dancer, like horrible. What is that poor thing trying to do? Kind of a dance thing. Oh,
I love that. What is she trying to do?
Oh my gosh. Well, who is that cute little frog over there hopping around,
Left, right, left,
yeah,
right.
just so awful. So I went to Carnegie Mellon, and I found it so hard. It just was very intense, incredible. My B. Krebs was my vocal teacher, and I wasn't strong. I wasn't ready. I love this idea of you don't have to go to college right away. I think I could have used that buffer year, and maybe things would have been different, but I was overwhelmed. So I ended up coming back. My parents were going through some stuff, and it was pretty and kind of an intense time in my life. So I came home, regrouped, and then I ended up going to Boulder. I did the opera program there, studied with Kuniaki Hata, who was incredible, and really kind of built up my chops. But I was in, like, on the weekends or at night, I was singing in like a Grateful Dead cover band. Like that was
wow.
kind of my happy
You
place.
couldn't get any different.
I know. I'm like,
at night.
I'm like, this is why I was like touring in Winnebago, like, you know, like singing like peace, you know, and then like running to like my, you know, art song recital, you know. So I think it was just always just kind of writing the lines, you know. Excuse me. I'm just getting over the COVID, so I'm a little, but so yeah, so I just kind of was kind of a little lost. I was like a kind of a little lost rebel, ended up coming home, and decided to go to Columbia for acting. What? At that time, they didn't have, Columbia College didn't have this strong musical theater program that they do now.
Right, right.
So Bill Williams, I mean, like, just the whole crew there just kind of embraced me, and I concentrated more on my acting. And start like Steve Carson was a piano player who played for my performance classes. And one day he was like, you just have this kind of jazz sensibility about your voice. And I knew nothing about it. I was like, oh, you know, so he hired me to do a gig with him for like 90 guys from Denmark. And we had to learn like 3 sets of jazz tunes. And I learned all this jazz standards, you know, and I loved it.
Well, but you know, you said opera and then you're doing, you know, Grateful Dead, all this, that's a mesh. That's a mesh up. So somewhere in there, you didn't even know that you had jazz chops as well, you know?
I really didn't.
But somebody heard it. He heard it in you. And was like, you can do this.
He did. And I was doing, it was a musical theater class. So I was also doing like Not Getting Married and like kind of mashing my acting chops with my musical theater, but I never really got to delve into that, your amazing career. Like you're like a goddess, you know, but I never fit anywhere, right? You know, and I think right now that I'm doing a little bit of everything, it's all of that is built this multi-genre aspect of my voice.
Right.
If you will. And I really can do gigs now where people are like, you want jazz? Okay. Do you want Stevie Nicks? Sure. Do you want, you know, and I think that's why I can do it now, you know. So when I came out here and tried to bring some like really heavy hitter jazz guys that I've been playing with, Damien Espinosa, you know, Mark Pian, like some of these guys we've been playing at Katarina's and just all the jazz awesome venues in the city. I try to bring them out here to play at the venues, and they're like, play Stevie Nicks, you know, play Alanis Morissette. And I'm like, I don't really know that music, but I need to work. So that's kind of how it evolved to me with what I'm doing now. And that's pretty much pop rock, acoustic. And now I feel like that training I had with opera and that strong bass, and it's really kind of given me my multi-genre aspect in my voice too.
Well, you know, and I can actually understand the whole, when someone introduces you to opera, you know, I was doing the musicals and singing and choirs and everything. And then when I went to college, my first year, you know, they give you that book, you know, you know, and you're like, this isn't, to me, I was like, this isn't what I want to do. But he said, but this is going to be your base. Yes. You need to have this. And then you can go and do whatever it is you want, which I truly believe. I truly believe. And so, you know, people say that you are a multi-genre vocalist. Genre. I'm like, yeah, everything you've just said. Now people look at you and go, oh, Heather, she can sing the phone book. Meaning throw anything at her and she can give it to you. And be proud of that. That's, you know, some people skip things, or, you know, you were there when somebody opened the door to something new, you walked through the door. And so that builds it up for you. So be proud of that. And improv, do you know improv can save you if you're standing on stage by yourself and you mess
Girl.
up, honey, improv is your friend. I did improv in college as well. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to stand there with egg on your face. You're going to find some way, somehow to move this forward.
And
Okay. So,
it's well, you're doing it right now. I mean, you're so good at this. I mean, this is part of it. It's being
Yeah.
on your toes and being able to deal with wackadoos like me. And you know,
wackadoo. You are not a wackadoo. Okay. So I want you to tell us the story about Bob Newhart.
it's a funny story. So I think it was like 2013, and I'm like out in Wakanda, aka Siberia, and I'm feeling I had such a strong, like amazing memories with CCP and Davenport's, and Daryl Nitz was my mentor guru for putting together my Rosemary Clooney show. And I just love that whole, I call them like this family of my life, you know, a really important tax on my map of things that were special to me in my life. But I moved out here and I've just kind of wasn't doing cabaret, and I was doing what I needed to do to survive out here, you know. But I get this call, and it's so funny. I have so many different worlds of music. I was singing out here. I still play with Steve Gritman, my partner. We play in venues all over, doing kind of like the acoustic rock thing. And I get a call from Nick Miller from Jam Productions, who books the Chicago Theater. And Bob Newhart was doing this comedy show at big venues, like in different towns. And he loves girl singers. And he was like, I think he just hires like a local songbird, you know. I'm not even sure how I got lucky enough to be on this call, but Nick, and I think it might've been a last minute thing, because I got the call like a week and a half before the gig. They're like, it's sold out show, Chicago Theater with the Chicago Jazz Orchestra. They're looking for a big band girl singer. Can you do it? I'm like, yes.
What did I just say?
Yeah, I'll be fine. They're like, okay, well, he's like, I'm going to hook you up with like the conductor. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, hung up the phone, like probably threw up. I don't even know. I called everybody. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? So I have like my Rosemary Clooney show. I've, toured, like we went to New York we've been all over regionally too. And, with this group, of guys that we threw this show together, and it became a really very solid and successful, and what I think is a beautiful tribute to an incredible musician, Rosemary Clooney. So I said, well, I've got my Rosie charts that Damien charted out. They're for a, quintet, but maybe I'll just, so I'm talking to the guy who's like, he's looking for like big band charts. And I'm like, dude, this is what I have. So I think we have like a week, maybe 6 days now. So I'll just send along what you have. So meanwhile, people are buying up the last of the seats they can, all of my friends and family, and just like, oh my God, and so the day comes, and they tell me I have a 30-minute sound check. So we go in the back of the Chicago Theater, of which we've all kind of grown up seeing shows there. And I'm in like the alley on my cell phone, which is probably this big in 2013. I don't remember, but right. The guy's calling me and he's like, I'm going to let you in the store. And I brought my mom with me because I could not handle this by myself. And they bring me up to the back of wow. Well, you know this. This is like, man, for you. But for me, I was like, so I go to the green room and I'm like, thank you very much. So they're like, oh, there's water, and I'll be back to get you for sound check. And we close the door. My mom and I were like, and then we're like, it's fine. We do this all the time, excuse me. So I was never more nervous, literally my entire life. I'm like, how am I even going to? How am I going to? So there was some issues like for time, and the guy kept coming back, and the stage manager, and he's like, it's now looking more like a 20-minute rehearsal. And I'm just like wanting to get out there because it was almost like a rehearsal, and then it was like 20 more minutes, and then I was on. So then he came back and he's like, you have about 7 minutes.
It went from 30 to 20 to 7. Yeah, I've been there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. You're a little bit more professional than me, but anyway, my mom gave me a glass of wine. She's like, just drink it. You're gonna be fine. And this is my favorite quote that my mom has ever said to me. And I give it to my students like all the time. I'm like, listen to me, your 40% is most people's 80%. Just take that with you when you go up there. And I was like, okay, Lamaze breathing, you know, I go up there on stage, like the little toad, not dancing girl, you know, I'm totally out of my element. And, you know, it was rough. I mean, these guys were pros and I had literally like they were visibly like, what the F is this? You know, rolling their eyes. You know, it was a really humbling experience. But again, I'm just trying to remain positive.
Right.
So I went through like maybe 2 songs. I did 5 or 6 songs, I think. From this moment on, you know, big band singer, Come Rain or Come Shine, you know, like my Rosie's like big hitters, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I went back, I cried in the dressing room because I felt like so horrible about myself after that experience with them. And I get it, you know, I was a freshie and, you know, not in their world. And then I just kind of like, they brought me up and I waited on the side. I looked out and I was like, oh my God, the Chicago theater's full.
Well, it's a lot of people.
A lot of people. And I've sung like in big places, you know, and it was always something that was rehearsed or with my music buddy family members. And, you know, I felt safe. I didn't feel safe. And there was nothing I could do but depend on myself and just go. And I knew I had about 30 family members and some fans were there. And, you know, I just pretended like I was just doing it for them. And I just kicked the heck out of it. I did okay, right? Yeah. It was an incredible moment. I don't really remember it.
Right. It went that fast too. It was like,
it's a blur. But when I did get off the stage, Bob was there. He was standing there with his like manager who had these cool dreads, very like cool looking guy who was taking care of Bob. And Bob just looked at me and he was just like, you know, great job, sweetie. And I was like, okay, check.
You know. There you go. There you go.
It was a good moment.
Yeah. I mean, you opened for his show. If he loved you and said, you did it, you did it.
Yeah.
You know? And I love that story. I love that you had that experience.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, you know, it's not that it's stage fright. It's just that, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this. And you knew the songs. The smartest thing you did was choose things that, hey, this is what I have. So that if you have to learn something for it, that, you know, that's a whole nother thing. But you knew what you had.
Right.
And you did have self-confidence, you know. Thank your mother for the wine.
Momo, thank you. Biggest fan.
But those are the kind of experiences. And also, I'm going to piggyback to improv helps you on that.
Oh, yeah.
It really does. Because you, like you said, you chose, I'm singing for my family and my fans. Everybody else is there, but that's who I'm focusing on because they're going to give you the strength. And trust me, again, no one's going to reach out and call someone out of the blue. Somebody told this person about you to call you to do this.
Right.
So,
and Nick was somebody that I knew through the music scene, but through friends too. And he knew like that I had been a working jazz musician and he knew about my Rosemary show and it's been very well. I mean, Howard Reich has always been an incredibly supportive, brilliant, you know, writer who's always supported me in my career and stuff. So I was, you know, I was on WGN a lot, you know, I was just actually Steve and Johnny were on Facebook and we were talking, you know, and Nick DiGilio. So all of this, like WN was a big supporter for me. So my name was out there, But again, that it wasn't my wheelhouse per se.
Right.
I have a
Right.
funny story because I was listening to your podcast with Greta Pope.
Okay.
And it was so wonderful to hear about your beautiful career, and like you're so talented and you're such a real person, and I enjoyed it. And I know you had the Menopause the musical
Right.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it came to Chicago. Were you
Right.
in that when it came to Chicago?
I was in the original Chicago company at the Apollo Theater.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I did, and I'm actually still doing that show.
Are you?
Just go across the country. But I've been doing that show for almost, my goodness, almost 16 years now. Yeah, menopause isn't going anywhere. Okay.
So I wanted to tell you this because when I was listening, I was laughing. Johnny Rogers called me. I can't remember how long ago it was, and they were casting in Chicago. He's probably like, who do I know that could probably be in menopause? Oh, I'll call Heather Moran, So, my God, that was something of a bleep show, but he called me because he heard me sing maybe and whatever. So I went to that audition and I'm in like the, waiting room, the audition. I hadn't been to an audition in years, and everyone's like doing their warm-ups and everything. And I'm like, texting Mike, like, my God, why am I here? Learning the music, which was so awesome and everything. But like, I again, I just refer to like this little frog jumping, like, why is this person here?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't fit, but what's going on? And I go into the audition and I sing it and everyone was like, we don't know what to do with you, because obviously you're not like a performer that should be like in a show like this, but your voice, it's like, so what do we do? And it was a really, really cool experience. You remember that? It was wild. And I was so honored that Johnny called me in for it. And I think he called me and he's like, yeah, I really don't know what to do with you, but you did really well, That was my connection with you. I was like, oh my gosh, Menopause the musical. So,
Yeah.
And you were the queen of that.
And I love that you said when people go, what do we do with you? It's
My life story. Yeah.
Right. See, but here again, you have people thinking, and who are they thinking about? You. So, it's all good. It's all good. Pat yourself on the back, rub your head, do all that stuff. So, all right. So time has flown, young lady.
Yeah.
And we
I'm
have
a
to bring
talker.
this to a close, I know. But you are going to sing for us again. So could you please tell us what you're going to sing?
Sure. Well, that was a lofty thing. And COVID has been really hard hitting on our family because this is my job. So I kind of started live streaming, but I couldn't have any musicians over and I don't play an instrument. So I'm been kind of teaching myself piano. And I've recently in my family, which I'm proud of, my middle son who's transgendered, and we've been through a journey with him in the last 4 years. So I just decided to do a song that, because I think cabaret embodies like our own voice to songs and making it our own and sharing our own stories, so this is my Charlie song that kind of just encompasses, that we're always here for him no matter what. We always have his back. And this goes for everyone I love, and that will be here to always take care of you. So that is the song I'm going to do. It's called Fix You by Coldplay. When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, when tears come streaming down your face, when you lose something that you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste. Could it be worse? Nights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. And high above or down below, when you're too in love to let it show. If you never try, then you'll never know just what you're worth. Nights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. Tears stream down your face when you lose something that you can't replace. Tears stream down your face, and tears stream down your face. I promise you that I will learn from my mistakes. Tears stream down your face, and lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try to fix you.
Mm. Thank you so much, Heather. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you, getting to know you.
I feel so honored and blessed. To you, Boyle, thank you so much for having me. Wydetta, it's been like an honor and a pleasure to do this and connect with you and share a little bit of, I haven't thought about some of this stuff for just a little bit. So it means a lot.
Thank you for joining us for another Cabaret Beat. I hope you'll be back next time. If you would like to learn more about Chicago Cabaret Professionals or make a donation, please visit us at the website. Look at the link below. Take care and see you next time on Cabaret Beat.